Hello everyone, I'm Wave, and today I wanted to talk about yet another emotional visual novel that I just recently finished reading by the name of Doko Iku no Anohi. This is a pretty intricately woven mystery visual novel that interweaves romance, drugs, and time travel. So let's get into it. So first off, before I even get too deep into talking about Doko Iku, I want to be very clear about one thing that almost got me to drop the game entirely, which is the way that the game saves your game. There are 5 routes across all of Doko Iku, and the game doesn't really do a good job at telling you how to go ahead and progress story further on. So across the 5 routes, there are 3 that you can do in any order upon just starting the game for the first time. Once you finish all 3 of these routes, you then should technically unlock the 4th one, and then from the 4th you go into the 5th as you're trying to uncover this mystery. The story of Doko Iku is about the main protagonist and how he has this memory deep within him that is obscured. He seems to remember killing a girl when he was a kid, but as far as like within any sort of potential like newspapers or just within like the police department, as well as to the people around him, no one recalls this exact event happening. And so as you are trying to like progress the story and uncover the mystery behind this murder when the protagonist was a kid, it does make sense for the story to kind of lock off routes progression wise. But what isn't very well explained is how to go about and save your game. This game only has 6 save slots, which I found to be like pretty weird, because I think this is like the only visual that I've seen where there was like such a restricted amount of save slots. And what you're supposed to be doing is, upon completing a route, what you have to do is you have to load the save file from the previous route. And it is very strange because as you're trying to load the save file, you'll get like that little preview of the screen that you saved on, and it'll show the exact like scene that you did your last save for that route. How it works is once upon your loading that save file, it'll then boot you back to the start of the game again. You'll get this different intro to the game, and then it'll transition into like the actual start of any one given playthrough. But I didn't realize that until I had finished the initial first 3 routes. And then what I ended up having to do is I had to spend a couple hours just with the skip button, as I had to play 2 of the routes over again, because you have to have like the completion status of every single route onto one save file. So even though the game saves like all of the CGs, even though it saves all of the progress that you have unlocked across all of your play sessions, for whatever reason you specifically do need to have all of your like route completions on one save file. So that is something that, like, before I even really get too deep into the story of Doko Iku, I do want to make it very clear that if you are somebody that wants to play this game, make sure to like not have the same issue that I did, because I feel like I've only ever really played one other visual novel that had that kind of like way of save progression, but I feel like in that visual novel that I had read, it was more clear. So yeah, that's just something I figured would be worth mentioning, because like I said, I almost dropped this game entirely, but I am glad that I didn't end up dropping the game, and that I persevered and went through the arduous task of going and replaying 2 other routes in order to get to the other 2 routes that I hadn't read previously. So like I said, Doko Iku is this like mystery visual novel that is trying to like, you're trying to discover what happened in the past. And to that end, Doko Iku makes sure to put that like at the forefront of your mind throughout a majority of its time. There are a lot of pretty like calming slice of life moments throughout the course of the game, but at the same time, I feel like this game leans maybe a little too hard onto like the darker side of things. The overall tone of Doko Iku can feel quite like oppressing, I think, at times. When you start the game, it feels very happy. There's not too many things that are like going on, but then as you progress, it will get noticeably darker. And I think in some ways maybe the game gets a little like too conveniently dark. There is like a core item within the story of Doko Iku that is a drug epidemic that sweeps through the town, and this drug is a pill that is called Marge, and allows anyone that takes it to enter a dreamlike state to where their mind gets sent back into the past, and they're able to overlap their present mind with the past, and in like essentially how it would feel in a dream where you can kind of like skip around between like scenes, you're able to live out the past. And through the use of this drug, you are using this as a tool to like try and uncover the mystery within Doko Iku's story. But as well as mystery aspects, I feel like this game has some similar like takeaways as far as like the moral of its story as another visual novel from the same studio that made Doko Iku that I read earlier this year, being Clear. As like a metaphor, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about very briefly, I think, something that really does like plainly make my point clear, being that within the PS2 OP for Clear, there is, I guess in like an Englishy kind of a way, there is a quote within the actual game itself talking about getting over the wall of clear, in quotation marks. And what I mean by that, and what like the story of that visual novel meant, is that in Doko Iku, I feel like there's a pretty like heavy prevalence on being able to overcome like the hurdle, and being able to like how people put up like a barrier around themselves to where you're trying to go too far past that boundary and reveal too much about yourself. You don't want to be hurt. So it is this kind of thing of like the wall of clear is this sort of metaphor for how much you're willing to show of your real self to other people, and vice versa, of how much other people are willing to share how much of the real them they are to you. So I think throughout the runtime of Doko Iku, it feels quite emotional because it is like this story of utilizing time travel and trying to be like, okay, well, how much are you going to be looking at the past compared to how much you should be looking towards the future and be willing to let go of the past? And then alongside that, how much you are able to let yourself be like more open to others. And so within the story of Doko Iku, I really like the way that it presents its characters. I think a lot of the characters that aren't even like the main heroines and the main character, a lot of side characters as well, all seem to have this like set of emotional baggage in the background to where it doesn't really too heavily conflict over the story, except for in certain like examples. But the fact that even earlier on into your first playthrough of the common route of Doko Iku, you could see like a lot of different like examples of how characters will talk about how maybe a family member has passed away years and years ago and how that maybe impacts them going forward. And then also I think recently I've seen some people talk about how in a way like a lot of visual novels kind of, once you get onto a dedicated like heroine route, a lot of the other heroines just kind of start to disappear and just completely fall off from the relevance of the story going forward once you land onto a dedicated heroine route. I feel like Doko Iku, in like trying to really convey the messages throughout its story, is able to like do a really solid job of making sure that a lot of the cast sticks around despite like leaning towards one heroine over the other four romantic interests that are available in the game, to where I really like the vibe of how, you know, you could have these like more edgier or like darker tones throughout the story, but you still are able to have plenty of moments throughout the story where you have like a whole group of friends and you're able to have all the characters bounce off of one another and provide a sort of like uplifting vibe within certain scenes throughout the story. Now, one thing I want to like kind of briefly touch on is the fact that this game is available for both PC and PS2. In most visual novels that I read, the H scenes don't really end up mattering all too much, but despite the fact that I haven't played the PS2 version, and I feel like they could have probably ended up doing a good job at making it to where the H scenes don't end up mattering too much, but I think if you have the option between both of those two versions, I think the PC version is probably going to be the better option to go with, because I think the H scenes in Doko Iku, I feel like play a pretty like prevalent role in how the way that like the romance side of the story progresses, and how it utilizes H scenes in a way that goes past that like just kind of initial like surface level of whatever you would want to call it as far as like fan service and whatever. I think the H scenes in Doko Iku are utilized more so of showing the deeper mentality and like the emotional progression of like a relationship, and like whatever that means, I don't know. But I think in general, I would say that yeah, the H scenes in Doko Iku do end up mattering, at least in my opinion. So I would say that playing the PC version over the PS2 version is probably the better way to go about it. But I guess that's like everything that I have to say on Doko Iku. I ended up really enjoying it. I do like the mystery visual novels that I read from time to time that are implemented like pretty well. I feel like in Doko Iku, the mystery aspect in the fact that like from the very start of the game you are presented with this question as to like what happened on that day back in the past. How did the protagonist end up killing a person and nobody seems to know about it except for the protagonist, and trying to like uncover and unravel that mystery surrounding it, being able to use a lot of dark and heavy vibes around the story and how everyone has emotional baggage. There is like this drug epidemic that's sweeping through the town, and you get to see like the repercussions of people overdosing on drugs, and also having these like underlying tones of the emotional boundaries between various kinds of people, and also being able to look deeper within like oneself and decide what is the importance of time and how you can reminisce on the past, but the fact of like the matter of wanting to look forward towards the future and cherish the days as they come. I ended up really enjoying Doko Iku overall, and I think it's a visual novel that is pretty enjoyable as a read for those of you that end up liking mystery novels, but at the same time maybe want something a little bit more like emotionally gripping. But yeah, those have been my thoughts on Doko Iku. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Wave, and I will see you next time.